All right. Hello, Matteo. Thank you so much for joining me here. If you could just introduce yourself to any of the viewers, we can just so everyone knows who you are and what you do.
Cool. Hi, I'm Matteo Menapace. I'm a designer of board games, mostly cooperative board games, and I'm mostly known for being the co-designer of Daybreak, which is a cooperative board game about stopping climate change.
Wonderful. Now, you focus a lot on cooperative games, like you said. What about a cooperative game really draws you to the genre? Why do you focus on that?
I like cooperative games because they create a play experience where people can work together in a fun way, not really work as in jobs, but tackle a problem which feels like a shared challenge and something that people can pool their ideas, their imagination, their creativity towards something that is for the benefit of the collective. And I came across cooperative games about 10 years ago when I was teaching as a lecturer at a university here in London. So at the time I was teaching creative computing, and I came across this method called unplugged computing, which was the idea that if you want to teach people how to code, one way to get them to think and to structure their thoughts and their plans before they go onto the keyboard and start typing code is to actually get them away from the computer, hence unplugged computing,
Mm-hmm.
and then to play board games. So there was a really interesting study that was done where two groups of people were asked to play. Well, one group was asked to play Pandemic, and the other group didn't play any games.
Okay.
And then after a month or so, they were tested against their computing skills or computer science knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And the group that played Pandemic outperformed the group that didn't play Pandemic. So then the
Oh,
researchers
okay.
were wondering what happened. Why is that? The variable being Pandemic, having played that game, made them generally better at this topic. And the hypothesis was that with playing a board game, any board game actually, not just cooperative board games, allows you to practice those skills that then are transferable to coding, which would be things like reading rules and
Yeah.
interpreting those rules is what in computing you would call algorithmic thinking. So thinking about how to structure a sequence of operations, how to process data, and how to manage all of that information, which is something that when playing a board game you do just without thinking. Really, it's just the
Yeah.
the practice. And what's more on top of that, cooperative games allow you to also share all of that thinking, where in a competitive game you mostly would try to hide that information, so that all that processing, all their algorithmic thinking would be happening in secret or within your
Right.
head. But in a cooperative game you would also be sharing it with the other players. In most cooperative games, not every, but
Right.
in Pandemic, for instance, which is an open cooperative game, which means that all the information is shared,
Yeah.
then players would not only be thinking about their strategy, but most likely they would also be talking about it with the other players, and therefore that process would be augmented by the social element of playing with other people. So that was the idea
Yeah.
of unplugged computing, and that got me interested in board games, not just from a play perspective, but also from a um, educational perspective.
Yeah.
And soon enough, I started trying to design some of them. And so, long story short, in 2020, I had the opportunity to work with Matt Leacock, who's the designer of Pandemic, at
Mm-hmm.
another cooperative game, which is Daybreak, where we tried to take this idea of cooperative problem solving and apply it to a huge problem that all of humanity faces, which is climate change.
Yeah. So do you think if Daybreak were like a competitive game or a team versus team game, that it wouldn't get people thinking in the same way or communicating in the same way about like engaging with climate change?
Yeah, it would be different, not necessarily better or worse, but there would be certainly a different focus. So
Yeah.
in a competitive game, you may have limits to what is communicated. Strategy would probably be kept secret because it
Yeah.
might be a competitive advantage. So the experience would definitely be different. Whereas in a cooperative game, what you can do is freely, openly talk about ideas and strategies, and you're all working together. And again, I'm using working in a very specific way. I'm not
Yeah.
implying that this is not fun, but by working together, I mean that everyone is collaborating towards
Yeah.
a common goal, and so you're all playing together against the game itself, which in our case cannot listen, cannot draw any competitive advantage from our conversations.
Right. So you've mentioned that the communication is the big draw about cooperative games, and that kind of leads me to thinking about alpha gaming, where there is such a takeover of the communication by one person that kind of overrules everyone else's communication. Within Daybreak, there aren't rules like there are in something like Just One, where all your communication's a single word just written down. Like there's nothing preventing you from saying whatever you want in Daybreak. Was that a heavy consideration when designing it? How open the communication could be, and how much you might want to stop an alpha gamer from taking over the conversation?
Yeah, we considered it because, as you say, communication is a very important element in cooperative games, and there are many cooperative games that hinge on severely restricting that communication. So if you think of a game like Hanabi or The Mind, where the restriction of communication is what makes that game fun
Exactly.
and
Yep.
challenging.
Mm-hmm.
But in a game like Pandemic or Daybreak, the communication is very open and there are no limitations, as you said. And that is a deliberate choice. So we didn't want to limit communication because we felt that it would both hinder the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Limiting communication would feel like something quite arbitrary. And we wanted also to retain a degree of realism in the way that we're trying to portray the way that global powers or political actors might be able to communicate about their political strategies, that what they want to do about the climate crisis. So we didn't feel like having these kind of communication limits would make sense for a game like Daybreak that tries to model this real world problem. But having said that, the alpha player or quarterbacking, as you say in the US, problem was very much in our mind as we designed and as we play tested the game. And one thing that worked for us was to not have turns. So take a step back. The alpha player problem is, in my understanding, when one player, typically the one that brought the game to the table, that knows the game already, is, let's say, very eager to do the right thing, and in doing so maybe oversteps what might be a hidden rule of giving everyone enough agency over their turn or whatever their moves. So I don't necessarily see it as a problem as such, because I mean, or at least it starts from a good place. Like I feel that it's not that it's people who don't want others to have a fun experience, but at least in my whenever I had that experience of an alpha player, it wasn't that someone was trying to play the game for me or didn't want me to have fun, but rather it was someone who was, as I said, very eager to have to win to win the game.
Yeah, they're trying to get everyone to enjoy it by getting a win, but there are sometimes things more important than just getting the win.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's a bit of a gray area, if you like.
Sure.
And so from that perspective, you could say that is down to the personalities of the players, or it could be that you let players manage their own social interactions, and you're not trying to necessarily restrict what they can say or not say in order to make sure that everyone has a fair chance at playing the game or making decisions without being too influenced by others. But at the same time, as a designer, you could think that if this is happening in a way that is not just the odd player, but that happens over and over, you can also try to design that behavior out of the game, potentially. Not necessarily completely, but try to prevent it from being an issue for other players. And so in our case, what we found worked to avoid the alpha player to become ever a problem that was reported by people who play tested the game or by us when we were observing other people play testing, was to remove turns. So to have everyone taking their actions at the same time, which is also what happens in a game like Spirit Island. So that means that when you're doing so in Daybreak, there are in each round there are 5 phases, but the most important one, or the one where players spend most of their time, is called the local projects phase, and it's where you play your cards in your tableau to do certain actions, and then because there are no turns, everyone does that at the same time. Then when people are done taking their actions and everyone agrees that they're done, they can move on to the next step, which is a sort of accounting phase where you look at the missions, how many missions are produced by each of the players. You pull them together into the atmosphere, or recent emissions, call them, and then you see the consequences of all that, and you trigger a series of crises, which are also an automated step. So by removing the turns, the individual player turns on the sort of meatier part of the round, that prevented the one player to emerge as the sort of dictator of everyone else.
But there was still enough going on in the game that there was communication still happening. It wasn't so individual that people were only looking down and not talking with everyone else.
Yeah. So I think removing the turns, or not having turns, because actually we never had turns. It was something that we introduced from the very first prototype. This idea of not having individual player turns was possibly the thing that prevented alpha player, the main factor for preventing alpha player from emerging. The other thing was also that if players have enough agency on their own, it's less likely that the alpha player behavior would emerge. So if as a player you have a special action or something that only you can do, then it is still possible, but it's, I think, less likely that someone else might tell you what to do. Another way to prevent alpha player would be, of course, to limit communication. So if there is some hidden information within the game system, then obviously not everyone has all the information, and therefore that behavior of one player being controlling everyone else would be prevented by the fact that they cannot know everything.
Yeah, just
So I think
having
that
in place, just prohibiting them. Yeah, you can't tell anyone what you saw here.
yeah. So if you have, for instance, a hidden hand of cards, then yeah, maybe the alpha player might still try to ask you what you have on your hand, but you could say no, I'm not going to tell you. Which is not the case in Daybreak, because all the cards are face up.
Right. Yeah, players have their own hands, but there's nothing secret about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So going back a bit, you had mentioned that that pandemic with the collaborative unplugged coding exercise. Was that the first introduction to any cooperative play that you remember having?
Yes, as far as board games go, yes.
In the digital space, are you? Did you play any cooperative digital games beforehand that you that stuck out to you?
Probably have, but I was thinking about games that or activities, playful activities that you could consider cooperative,
Yeah.
like the one you mentioned in your video about people trying to keep a ball in the air without touching the
Yeah.
ground.
Yeah.
That is something that I've been playing a lot as a
Yeah.
child or growing up. So I definitely understood the idea of cooperative play in general, but when it came to board games, Pandemic was certainly the first one that I came across, and
Yeah.
and a very good one to start with.
Are there any more recent cooperative games in the digital space that you're familiar with? And is there anything that maybe the tabletop and digital gaming spaces could learn from each other about cooperation?
I need to think about that, because
Yeah.
I haven't played any cooperative digital games recently, or at least not that I can think of at the moment.
That's fine.
But yeah, let me have a think. But we can maybe move on to the next question, and
Yeah.
meanwhile, I think something will come up.
All right. Well, when you were designing Daybreak, were there any existing cooperative tabletop games that kind of inspired the directions you wanted to go in? You had mentioned a couple already. You mentioned like Spirit Island with its simultaneous turns. You mentioned a couple other things. So, were there any particular inspirations while designing?
From not necessarily from the cooperative game space, apart from the one that you already mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
It was more of a process of trying to model a certain problem, which at first for us was to model how carbon emissions are produced across different sectors of the economy and how they then create cascading crises.
Yeah.
And then to introduce a way for players to try and prevent that from spiraling out of control. So we took quite a problem first approach in a sense,
Sure.
and then bit by bit we introduced some ideas that we kind of borrowed from games like Terraforming Mars at first. Then Race for the Galaxy was a game that inspired the mechanics where you spend or you discard a card to activate the
Right.
effects of another card,
Mm-hmm.
and the simultaneous turns wasn't. I don't remember explicitly discussing this Matt as an inspiration. I think maybe it was just part of our set of general inspiration, but it wasn't something we said, oh,
Sure.
let's do like Spirit Island.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you see as either some recent trends or the future of cooperative gaming from either just the past couple of years, or where do you think you see it's going?
I think that an interesting space that cooperative games have been exploring is two-player games, and I'm thinking in particular about SkyTeam and how that game has made a strong case for cooperative games that are simple and can feel meaningful when played by two people. So I think so I'm saying this because sometimes the critique of cooperative games is that they might feel like a multiplayer solitaire, in that you're either doing something which doesn't really relate to what other people are doing, or you're all working as a kind of hive mind on the same problem, and you're not necessarily your individual contribution doesn't feel necessarily meaningful. It might still be fun because you're contributing as a group in different ways to solving this collective problem, but you don't necessarily have a defined role. And I think that a game like SkyTeam shows that you can have a game where people have a defined role and they make a unique individual contribution to increasingly difficult challenges, but it doesn't feel overwhelming also. So I think that's where there can see a lot of space for cooperative games to continue exploring and to evolve.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, my wife and I have played Daybreak a number of times as a two-player game, and it does work out very well.
Cool.
SkyTeam also.
I think in general. Sorry, go on.
No, just that SkyTeam does have a different feel on how much you're directing in the shared space versus individual spaces with the defined roles, like you said.
Yeah, and I think in general, the tension with cooperative games is always between how much do you communicate and how much does that communication then influence the agency of other players. And so for instance, again, SkyTeam is one that limits communication quite heavily, in that you cannot share what your dice rolls are. But that still opens up the possibility for people to communicate by taking actions that then infer what you might have in front of you in the hidden part of the
right.
game.
The communication is through the game space rather than outside of it verbally.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So I think the design space that is open for cooperative games to explore is exactly that. How much of the game happens, or how much of the communication between players happens through the game, as you say, and how much of it happens through open verbal communication or otherwise. So finding interesting and engaging ways for people to solve that collective problem and to manage that communication, or potentially miscommunication, because you could also have ways in which the game breaks that communication or sort of muddles it.
Yeah, I've seen
is
that in like cooperative trick takers or deduction games like Bomb Busters. Those definitely heavily
Mm.
involve communicating through the cards you're playing or the tiles you're revealing.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. I haven't played Bombusters yet, but it's on my list. And I've
Yeah.
played a lot of the Lord of the Rings trick-taking game
Yes. Yeah,
recently.
that's been a big hit with our family.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's interesting how that game works, even with people that don't know anything about the Lord of the Rings. Like I played it with my parents
Hmm.
last year, and they vaguely know that there is a thing, a book, and a series of films
Yeah.
called The Lord of the Rings, but they had no clue about the story itself. And yet the game was simple enough, and they had a reference to trick taking because that's a very popular traditional type of card games,
Yeah.
that they knew already what to do with the cards, and then the extra flavor that was built around the different chapters felt nice and stimulating.
Hmm. Although I'm guessing they might not have learned much about like who Galadriel is or what Sam's all about necessarily. The same way a player from Daybreak might learn more about the different factors and solutions to climate change. Definitely different
Yeah,
angles.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think if you know about the Lord of the Rings and you play the trick taking game, then you might be able to appreciate the why the goal of Sam, for instance, is getting a certain specific heals card because he
Yeah.
likes heals, and
Mhm.
there are some really nice design elements there. But again, these are like almost Easter eggs in the sense that
Yeah.
you enjoy them if you know the story, and or there is like the pony card, which is
Yeah.
a one trick pony.
Yeah. That
Like
was
it's
funny
not
when we
really,
realized
yeah.
that.
Those are just little delightful moments that but I mean the game works as a series of mechanics that is engaging and fun in itself, and then
Absolutely.
if you know about Lord of the Rings, you can enjoy it even more.
Yeah. One thing I saw when I was reading through some of the design diaries that you've written about Daybreak, you call it playful activism, and I liked that phrase a lot. I don't know if there's any other examples or things that you've seen that you would also call that outside of Daybreak, because it definitely fits very well. And uh, I found in the first part of the video, I showed a Save the Whales board game that attempted to be that, even though the gameplay, from what I've understood, is very, very boring and
Hmm.
just did not make people want to engage with saving the whales at all. But whether in tabletop or any other space, is there anything else that you would have you've seen that you would have called playful activism?
It's a big question. I recently started a PhD looking at this
Oh yeah.
space.
Oh wow.
So the the idea of or testing the idea that games can be transformative experiences, not just in a educational sense. So games have been proved to teach people
Hmm.
stuff, even if it's just about learning how to play the game and beating the system. But often educational games go beyond that, and also through the process of learning the game and the rules and how to win or how not to lose, you also learn something that you can then apply to things like climate change, for instance,
Yeah.
or climate action. But so games are really good at teaching
Hmm.
things, concepts, skills, information, and that's fairly well proven. But it's not really proven that games can have an impact on people's behaviors. So it's
Hmm.
not a given that people might play a game like Daybreak or another climate game or that Wales Save the Whales game and then change their behaviors in the real world. Um, so the question is, can games do that? Are we asking too much of games to do that? And or how could games be used together with other interventions to as part of a process that might lead people to then change their individual or collective behaviors to then create that kind of playful activism. So the short answer is I don't know, but I'm trying to find out, because of course it's a very important question, I think. And my hunch so far is that just playing a game in itself is not necessarily going to turn you into an activist or
Right.
change your behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But because a game is a social experience, if you play that game with people who are maybe already on the path or further along the journey of, say, activism, then you might be more likely to follow their steps or to be interested in doing that. Or if you're already an activist, maybe you could use the game to strategize, to simulate. I mean, this is now the realm of so-called serious games. So games that are used to actually simulate war, for instance, wargaming, or planning scenarios and think about or simulate the future. But I think also, again, in a social sense, a game can be a moment of shared experience, especially if it's a cooperative game, and maybe that shared experience can build trust or can build a way for you to get to know others, and so the game might work in a context where you are also doing other things with these people that those might become your friends or might become your comrades. So in that sense, I think that playful activism would be using games in a context where people are already interested in doing activism.
Right. So not necessarily completely changing someone's mind, but used as part of the process of building the connections and just connecting with community.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, that's all I had for questions. If there's anything else that you wanted to chime in with, now would be a perfect time.
I'm still thinking of the video games, but no, nothing comes up at the moment.
That's fine. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the call. Thanks so much for your time.
No worries. Thank you. It's been really fun to chat to you.
Yeah. Well, best of luck in all the future endeavors and on that PhD.
Thank you.